多国气候变化巴黎会议即将举行。今天，中国应对气候变化的政策与行动2015年度报告也正式发布。为了帮大家更好了解报告和中国参加巴黎会议的立场所在，今天我们很高兴请来中国气候变化事务特别代表谢振华先生
Mr. Xie Zhenhua from NDRC to brief you.
请他向大家介绍这方面情况。 并回答大家提问。
And he will also take your questions. Now I give the floor to Mr. Xie. Dear friends from the press, good morning. I wish to thank you all, domestic and foreign media, for your long-time attention to the issue of climate change and for your interest in China's policies and actions for addressing climate change and China's positions on this issue. Today, we are talking about the 2015 annual report on China's policies and actions for addressing climate change. This report includes information on the progress we've made this year in tackling climate change, and also China's positions regarding the relevant issues to be discussed at the Paris conference. This year is the last year of the 12th five-year plan. Today I wish to update you on the statistics regarding our achievements in this year. By 2015, CO2 emission per unit of GDP decreased by 6.1% year-on-year and lowered by 15.8% compared with the same period 5 years ago. Non-fossil fuel energy accounts for 11.2% in our fuel energy consumption, and the 12th five-year plan sets a target of 11.4%. So we have basically attained our target, raising it by 4.4 percentage points. And the forest stock increased by 2.188 billion cubic meters on the 2005 level. Pilot programs on low-carbon parks are carrying out in different localities, and all the 7 carbon trading systems are now operating online. We are increasing our capacity for adapting to climate change, and the awareness on low carbon and green development is increasing substantially. China has made an important contribution to the global effort to counter climate change. In June this year, China submitted its INDCs to the UNFCCC Secretariat. This is a report regarding China's plan for post-2020 actions. It outlined our goals and tasks. You can find the information in our report, so I will not repeat the information. Now I'm ready to take up your questions. Thank you, Mr. Xie. Now the floor is open for questions. Please identify your affiliation.
巴黎会议是万众瞩目的，然后还是虽然这上面写了中国的立场，还是想请您再讲述一下，就是对本次巴黎会议的一个期待，就是对于2015的这个全球协议是哪些是您认为是应该哪几点是应该达到的？再一个就是那个煤炭数据的修订。 之前其实国内都已经公开发布过，但是因为最近呢，一些媒体又在报，所以大家就是觉得这个有一些质疑，是不是这个煤炭的数据被低估？这个您能不能也解释？谢谢。
巴黎气候大会这个马上就要召开了，应该是在11月30号到12月11号，这个就是公约的第21次缔约国大会，京都议定书的第11次缔约国大会。这次会议呢，它主要的目的是要达成关于2020年后加强应对气候变化的一个协议。所以现在世界各个国家都在围绕着巴黎大会的成果来展开这个多轮的谈判。我最近刚刚从巴黎回来，去参加了这次缔约国大会的部长级的预备会。
Mr. Xie said that he just came back from Paris from climate change meeting, ministerial climate change meeting.
特别是主要问题依然存在。我们希望这次会议呢，应该有这么几个。第一个就是现在已经有160个国家向联合国秘书处呢提交了各国的自主贡献的一个方案。
160 countries have raised proposals to the
to
UN.
the Secretariat of the UN. And we hope that more countries will submit their respective contributions, because this will show that countries all around the world are taking efforts to tackle the global climate change. This would be a very encouraging achievement. And secondly, we hope that the outcomes of this summit will insist on the basic principles of the UNFCCC and will implement these basic principles under the UNFCCC to enhance global action. We also hope that a forceful, ambitious, and legally binding agreement will be concluded during the Paris summit. However, we do hope that the outcomes will be within the framework of the UNFCCC through negotiation. In the actions tackling climate change, the principle of fairness, common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities should be followed to take into full account the basic conditions of respective countries, and all the parties should follow these principles to reach consensus. This is our major concern. Moreover, to ensure the success of the meeting and to secure the agreement, we believe it is essential to establish political mutual trust. And it should be built on the principles of implementing those consensus. Countries should fulfill their commitments, which is the very foundation and the manifestation of following the principles of the UNFCCC. For example, developed countries should provide support to the developing countries in capital and technologies. And also, it is suggested that by 2020, the developed countries should cut their emission by 25 to 40% from that of 1990. And every year, developed countries should provide $100 million of assistance to developing countries. We hope that all of these commitments will be implemented on the ground, because this is the foundation for our political mutual trust. As things now stand, there is already the basic consensus that we all hope that the outcomes of the Paris conference would pushes to transform their way of life and the way of production to a low-carbon and green development model. And all the countries should coordinate in their efforts to tackle climate change. The end goal is to achieve green and low-carbon development. If this can be put into the outcome of the conference, it would mark a major milestone, and we hope that with the concerted efforts of all parties, we can work together towards the same goal. The Chinese government attaches high importance to efforts to address climate change. We have already submitted our own national intended contributions, and we have already fulfilled our targets in spite of the difficulties. During the negotiations, we will continue to play a positive and constructive role. In the multilateral institutions, China has done so much. For example, our President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang have set great store by the fight against climate change. They have engaged in discussion with other countries' leaders on climate change. This year, our leaders, together with India, France, the EU, the United States, have issued the joint announcements on climate change, all of which all of those joint announcements have related content about the solutions to climate change to be discussed in the Paris conference. This can be seen as the important contribution and constructive opinions of the Chinese government on climate change. In addition, the Chinese delegation is also engaged in intensive consultation with developing countries. For example, the BRICS countries have issued their joint announcement, and the countries with a united consensus have also enhanced communication and exchanges. The Group 77 have also conducted internal discussion on climate change. Now, China, together with other countries and institutions, have maintained very smooth channels of communication, which will be an important contribution for the multilateral negotiation process. Just now you mentioned the statistics of coal consumption in China. It is fair to say that this is an important gesture for us to enhance transparency of our economic statistics. The statistics have become more transparent and accurate. After the third economic statistics survey, we have seen that there are some adjustments that take into full account the situation on the ground, and it is more transparent. However, in the INDC submitted by China, in the collection of the statistics, we have already taken into account the adjustment in the coal consumption statistics. Therefore, the relevant content in the INDC will not be affected by these statistics, and our commitments also remain unchanged. We are still working to implement the INDC targets, and we believe that these targets will be fulfilled. Thank you.
6排，这样来走，6排走，对，可以啊。你好，我是美国全国公共广播电台的 NPR。
I'm with NPR.
一个方面就是
We talked about the 7 emission trading systems, how to organize them into a nationwide system. Many Chinese are concerned about crop pollution, but not as concerned about climate change. What do you think is the reason, and what do you plan to do to address this issue? China is carrying out pilot programs for carbon emission trading in 7 provinces and municipalities. The work is going on quite well, and they are all operating online. And the carbon prices are now stable. You can see the information in the report. In carrying out the pilot programs, we are not focusing too much attention on carbon. Instead, we want to explore mechanisms to build a carbon market. There are many questions involved in this endeavor, like the general quantity or the distribution of quota, how to verify the emission before trading, because to carry out trading, emission quantity equals money, so we need mechanisms to verify the statistics. To support these pilot programs, we have released a regulation regarding these programs and guidance on how to verify the historic emission and methods on the distribution of quotas and the general quantity and the specific methods used for verification. These are being tested out through the pilot programs, and we are now working on legislation. With these preparations made, we will be well positioned to put in place a nationwide system. So these years we are working on these fronts, and our goal is to initiate a carbon market by 2017. Many countries, like the United States and European countries, they are also expressing the hope to establish a common carbon market with China. We believe we need to engage in cooperation and exchange our experience and lessons in these practices. We have good cooperation with EU members, and we are drawing on their expertise and lessons in establishing carbon markets. The EU has some very good experience in this regard that we can learn from, and it can also offer some lessons. It used to have very high carbon emissions, as high as 30 euros. Now it's only a couple of euros. The reason for the high price was because too many quotas and the emission reduction efforts that are not strong enough. So we learned from their experience and practices, and hoping that our market will operate smoothly. We hope we will have such a market by 2017. About climate change and air pollution, in fact, they are problems of the same root. Air pollution, especially smog in cities, is a serious problem in China. The State Council has released a 10-item regulation on clearing up air pollution. These are very correct moves, I believe. Why do we have better air qualities during major events in Beijing. I think that's because we've identified the root causes, and we are taking effective steps. As long as we have the determination, we will be able to address these issues. But we must also take into account issues of economic development, job creation, and social stability. It takes time, and I don't think it will take a long time to address these issues. Climate change, like I said, is of the same issue, same root of air pollution. We are carrying out plans to save energy and reduce emission, increase energy efficiency, adjust energy mix, and increase forest carbon sinks. These are also important steps in addressing air pollution. If we can coordinate our steps on different fronts, we can address all these issues at the same time. I know that many people are concerned about air pollution because they feel the impact keenly. And climate change may not seem that immediate a threat to the common people, but in fact, many countries are recognizing the hazard of climate change because there are more extreme weathers like hurricanes, floods, and droughts. With greater awareness and recognition, people will better understand these issues. Like other countries, China is also raising its awareness about climate change. In the past 10 years, big changes have taken place in this field. The government is taking a multitude of measures, and these measures are welcome and supported by local governments, business community, and the common people. Thank you.
Could you tell us more about the fulfillment of the target of the reduction in the carbon emission per unit of GDP in the first half of this year? Are we expected to fulfill the annual target of cutting 40 to 45% of the carbon emission this year? In this annual report, you can find various statistics and measures, as well as the achievements of those efforts. So maybe I won't repeat those statistics and specific measures so as to save us more time. Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. I'm with Legal Daily News. I noticed that China, in the report, it says that China has submitted its INDC to UNFCCC Secretariat. And it says that China will see the peak of its carbon emissions by 2030 and will make hard efforts to achieve this goal. Do you consider this goal difficult, and what are the steps you will take to achieve this goal? The INDC is, in fact, a package plan. It includes mitigation and adaptation and our positions in the global endeavor against climate change. The goal is that China's carbon emissions will peak by around 2030, and we will work hard to try to achieve this goal ahead of schedule. And carbon intensity will be lowered by 60 to 65% from the 2005 level, and non-fossil fuel energy will account for 20% of the primary energy consumption, and increase forest stock by 4.5 billion cubic meters. These are our goals in terms of mitigation. On adaptation, other countries in their INDC, they do not talk much about adaptation, but China has made specific arrangements for adaptation. One, we will establish early warning system. And two, we will take a series of steps at disaster prevention and relief. And three, we will enhance our infrastructure in our climate change action. So we have a adaptation strategy to increase our capacity for tackling this issue. And the INDC not only includes goals, but also policy steps and some steps in specific projects and programs. So China's INDC is a responsible document, and it is a realistic document. We are confident that we can attain our goals. I think this is what makes our INDC different. To achieve the goal of peak at around 2030, we must save energy and increase energy efficiency. Energy consumption in China still lags far behind those of other countries. We are still consuming 1.9 times over the average energy consumption in the world. During the 11th and 12th five-year periods, we took a number of steps to save energy, reduce consumption, and increase energy efficiency. The World Bank says that in the past 20 years, China has saved about 50% of the global energy saved in the same period. So in the total quantity of energy saved in the world, half of them was saved in China. And we still have huge potential in this regard. Because to save energy and increase its efficiency, we can improve the quality of our economy and help us find new sources of energy. We can increase our economic development, double the speed of our economic development without increasing energy consumption. In China's energy mix, coal accounts for 66% last year, and the goal for the 12th five-year period is to reduce it to 65%. Non-fossil fuels now account for 11.2%. By the end of this period, it will be 11.4%, and by 2030 it will be about 20%. To achieve these goals, the international community believes that China, to achieve these goals, must make painstaking efforts. I agree, but we are making progress. In the past 5 years, in the global renewable energy production, China contributed significantly, about 37% to the total increment of the use of renewable energy. And our use of non-renewable energy, our use of renewable energy has reduced the cost of producing wind power and solar power. So there's been significant reductions in the cost of this energy production. We will also increase forest stock, increase our afforestation efforts, make sure that they can better retain soil and water, and increase their carbon sink capacity. The 18th CPC Central Committee recently convened its 5th plenary session, which sets the goal of green, innovative, and coordinated development. These are all efforts, fundamental steps at achieving our goals.
Could you tell us what specific agreements you're hoping to reach in the Paris talks, and how the Paris negotiations were affected by the by the 2014 agreement with the United States? So how did that agreement affect what we'll see in Paris, and what specifically do we expect out of the Paris talks in terms of agreements? Thank you.
您好，我是彭博新闻社的记者。我的问题是，您认为巴黎的会议上具体会达成一个怎样的协议？另外的一个问题是，2014年与美国签订的协议将会以何种方式影响在巴黎即将达成的协议？我们具体可以从巴黎期待怎样的一个协议会出现？
我们希望这次巴黎会呢，能够
We
有
hope
一个
that
这个有法律约束力的
Paris conference will produce a legally binding document.
当时的这个授权呢，还是协议、议定书或者具有法律效力的一些其他的一些文件。
But the mandate was includes agreement, legally binding document, and outcome document. We hope it will be legally binding.
各国加强行动的这么一个
It will be a document for countries to implement the convention and enhance their coordinated actions.
这个协议当中呢
As I said earlier,
非常明确，它要遵
in
循
this
公约的基本
document, it must be clear that it will abide by.
We have to interrupt this press conference and head to Manila in the Philippines, where leaders, ministers from the 21 APEC member economies are gathering for family photo to mark this year's key meeting. Chinese President Xi Jinping, as we're seeing now, arrives at the Philippine International Convention Center in Pasay, Metro Manila, and he's going to attend a family photo at the Convention Center in Manila.
China, President Xi Jinping.
And Filipino President is receiving him, and he's the last leader, national leader, to arrive at the Convention Center to take part in the family photo shooting. He landed in Manila on Tuesday and delivered a speech at an APEC CEO summit on Wednesday. And before President Xi's trip, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said his presence at the meeting shows China's support to the meeting, and then China attaches a great importance to APEC progress. And we'll give you a live coverage of the family photo shooting later on in the program. And let's head back to the site of the press conference on climate change.
I think with the negotiation going deeper and the countries playing a constructive role and take flexible approaches, I think at the final stage of the conference we will be able to reach some consensus. Leaders from various countries will attend the meeting, and they will play an important role in providing political guidance. I hope we will see a successful Paris conference with joint efforts of all countries and address this issue. I know developed countries are now concerned about whether these principles can be upheld, and the financial and technological support to developing countries must be implemented. This is an important part of the success of the meeting. This is what tops the mind of developing countries. and an important way to show constructive approaches and positions. I think these issues will be addressed. Last November, Chinese and American leaders issued a joint declaration, and in September this year, they again issued another one on climate change. And
Right now, let's head back to Manila once again as APEC leaders, as we mentioned, are preparing to take a family photo to mark this year's key meeting. And this year's meeting is themed on building inclusive economies, building a better world. It focuses on subjects such as regional economic integration and small and medium-sized enterprises, human capital development, and sustainable growth. The 21-member APEC is the top-level and most representative cooperation mechanism covering a wide area of Asia-Pacific. It also played an important role in advancing trade liberalization and facilitation and promoting economic integration and also boosting connectivity. And it's a tradition for the national leaders attending APEC summit to take family photo, and usually they would wear the traditional costume of the hosting nation. But this time, as we see from the picture, that they're wearing suits instead of traditional costumes. And you're watching CCTV News' special coverage on the APEC meeting currently held in Manila, and the national leaders of the 21-member countries are gathering for a family photo shooting. The Asia-Pacific region, which is vital to global peace and development, accounts for 40% of the world's population, 48% of world trade, and 57% of global output. APEC has altogether, APEC's members will seek to expand information sharing and technical capacity building and work towards eventually establishing an APEC-wide free trade area, or widely known as FTAAP. And during this year's meeting, they will review the progress of a 2-year collective strategic study on issues related to the FTAAP, which was initiated by APEC leaders in Beijing last November and co-chaired by China and the United States. Okay, it's a very quick family photo shooting with the 21 national leaders waving to the camera. CCTV News will give you more updates about the APEC meeting that's currently going on in Manila, the capital city of the Philippines. And now let's go back again to the site of the press conference on fighting climate change.
For example, the battery use. There are technological breakthroughs in the battery use area. And another issue is the electric power charging pump. These are all the issues that we need to tackle through coordinated efforts. I believe in the city transport system as well as in the airspace and maritime, the shipping area. We are taking measures to enhance technological innovation and energy conservation. Thank you. Thank you. I'm from Hong Kong. Just now, you mentioned the major difference in the Paris conference. What are the specific examples of those differences? Thank you. The differences mainly lie in the form of common but differentiated responsibilities. Now, although there is not a single country that opposes the common but differentiated responsibilities, still we hope that this principle can be implemented on the ground. For example, to be implemented in emission reduction, according to the historic responsibilities and the respective capabilities of different countries. Developed countries, according to the UNFCCC, should achieve absolute emission reduction with forceful measures. The IPCC suggests that by 2020, developed countries should cut 25 to 40% of their emission. However, this target is far from being achieved. Developed countries should also step up efforts in the technological and capital assistance to developing countries. So this is where we see the differences. In the new agreement to be concluded in the conference, such the differentiation responsibility should be showed, and specific measures should be taken. For example, China has already announced its targets of carbon emission peak. What we lack is more measures to implement this target. Also, due to the different capacities and infrastructure development of different countries, there may still take some time to implement those targets. But generally speaking, the countries, including developed ones, still do not have the pre-warning system, the early warning system. So it is important to help countries to enhance their mitigation and adaptation capability. According to the principle of historical responsibilities and respective capabilities, developed countries should provide technological and capital assistance to developing ones, i.e., by 2020, every year they will provide $100 billion to developing countries. Those measures are still yet to be implemented. At the same time, developing countries should also take their measures and contribute their share. China has already announced the establishment of the South-South Cooperation Fund. Over the past 3 years, we have taken a host of measures. For example, we have committed 400 million RMB to help over 20 countries in enhancing their capacity of using new energy. We have also conducted a training program for 1,000 officials and staff from 120 countries in this regard. So it is fair to say that China has already contributed our share to provide capital assistance to developing countries. However, such responsibility is different from those of developed countries. In terms of capital, according to the UNFCCC, developed countries should transfer the low-carbon and energy-saving technology and capital to developing countries, but still, those measures are not implemented fully. In enhancing transparency, much work still remains. And also, the developed countries should help developing countries to enhance their capacity of statistics collection and inspection. In all of these efforts, we should uphold the principle of differentiation, and developed and developing countries work together to form synergy and complementarity to tackle climate change. We hope that the agreement to be concluded will resolve these issues and show our common aspiration. Thank you.
I'm with Reuters. I have two questions about the Paris conference. Do you think the conference will be affected by the Paris terrorist attacks? And second, to achieve good outcomes at the conference, what steps will China take, and will China make any compromises, or will China make changes to its current positions? In the wake of the terrorist attacks in Paris, French Foreign Minister Fabius, who is also chairman of the Paris Conference on Climate Change, has stated that the Paris Conference will take place on schedule. This is a major event in the international community, and it is a very significant event in the international cooperation in tackling climate change. We very much hope that it will be a milestone conference in our joint endeavor. Positive outcomes at the conference, if agreed upon, will meet the aspirations of all countries. So the French government has said it will take place on time. The Chinese delegation has now come together. We met these days to prepare for the conference, and we will attend the conference as scheduled. We hope we will work with all other countries to ensure the success of the Paris. On INDC, no matter what happens, China's commitment to INDC is unshaken. We honor our word, and we will fulfill our pledges despite difficulties. We will not step back from our commitment due to some difficulties. Do you mean if we will intensify our efforts? We have conducted research in 2 years before we submitted our goal in the INDC. They are scientific goals, and they are only identified after thorough preparations. We anticipate some difficulties, but we will overcome them. If we want to make the goal even higher, it will require more efforts. First, the most important is technological innovation, without which a higher goal will be unattainable. We also need incentive mechanisms at the global level, because we need innovations in technologies. Countries should not stay behind closed doors and rely on old technologies to achieve their goals in climate change. So we need technologies and financial support from developed countries. This is critically important. So, as I said, our goals will not change, and we will work hard in this field. We will try to achieve our goal ahead of schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, SCIO. The fifth plenum of the 18th CPC Central Committee adopted the proposals for the 13th five-year plan, and the NDRC is also making relevant plans. What do you have in mind for promoting low carbon and green development? Thank you.
18大确定了中国我们要有5个创新
There are 5 innovations,
在这方面其中有
including innovation in green development. According to the suggestions on promoting ecological progress of the State Council, it also proposed the idea of green and low carbon development. This target is basically achieved in the 12th five-year plan, and we believe that in the top-level design, as well as the implementation measures, the 13th five-year plan will also have related content and measures in this regard. In the documents to implement the outcomes of the 5th plenum, we also rolled out a host of measures to promote innovation in technology, etc. And I believe that the 13th five-year plan will also reflect those targets. Thank you. The last question.
那位男士，对对，站在那位。
谢谢主持人。中国报道的记者，我有2个问题。第一个呢是关于我们现在国家在在提出了这个"一带一路"的倡导。那么我们国家在与"一带一路"沿线国家，特别是海上丝绸之路的沿线国家，在这个应对气候变化方面，是否有一些合作的意向？比如说一些海防工程的建设呀，或者是一些关于这个就是基金方面的一些这个帮助。另外一个呢，就是我们提到国内需要大力的发展这个清洁能源，但是呢，在过去几年我们也发现有一些这个光伏产业的企业，比如说尚德电力，它在经营方面也是出现了一些问题，由于这个可能发展过快。那么在未来我们如何避免这种清洁能源产业发展的过快，然后呢出现了一个相对的产能过剩的情况？谢谢。
How do we avoid excess capacity in these industries?
它的实际上就是这种合作，将来可能会越来越和这个应对气候变化的这些措施。
Cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative will include climate change actions in the future. For example, infrastructure development. When we conduct infrastructure projects abroad, we will incorporate low-carbon technologies. There will be greater effort in this field. And there's also green finance, which is to incorporate requirements of green development in the various aspects of economic development. Especially in our cooperation with developing countries, we must think about how to improve their capacities for adaptation. This is a foremost consideration in South-South cooperation. We will help improve their capacity for early warning and disaster prevention and relief, and increase their infrastructure readiness, and help them better cope with the effects of extreme weathers. So this will be an important part of the Belt and Road Initiative. By doing so, we will be able to connect our strategies with the development needs and capacities of other countries. About photovoltaic industries, renewable energy is developing fast in China, with new technologies coming out very over a short period of time.
我们占了世界市场上
We
占了相当大的。
produce a large share
这其中呢
of
有一
solar
个很大的贡
products
献，
in the
就是
global
把
market.
光伏产业可再生能源的成本大大的降低了。
This is because we significantly reduced the cost of these industries. There might be some
但是随着这个市场越来越规
blind
范，这个
efforts
企业的
in
发展
this
越来越成
industry,
熟，
but
这个问题
with
我想呢，都应
the
该能够
markets
解决。
maturing and the better
我在和
management
美
and
国我们
regulation,
的
I
一
think
些
these
谈判代表谈判的
problems
时候
can be
你
addressed.
们这
In my
个大家
negotiations
要
with
发
my
展鼓
American
励
and
发展可
European
再生能源，
counterparts,
结果你们又对中国的光伏产业 搞这
I
个反垄断。
said to them that
实际上你承认不
you
承
are
认？ 中国的光
advocating
伏产业的
renewable
发展
energies, and then
对
at
你
the same
们
time
国
you
家
are
和对全球
applying
成本降低、技术提高
countermeasures
做出了
against
很大的
China's
贡献。
PV
他们承认这
products.
一点。
Do you recognize China's contribution in this field? In fact, they do.
谢谢谢主任，
Thank
谢
you.
谢各位。